Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Today we have a wonderful and colorful guest who's going to be joining us here on the program to talk about his longest running drag cabaret, which is on the West Coast. Our guest today spent his childhood in the scrappy northwest Portland neighborhood of Linton. And shortly after his military service, he created a conventional life in far southeast Portland as a married man with 2 children. He worked at a Fred Meyer store and was, as it told one interviewer in 2005, a guy with a crew cut and horn-rimmed glasses. And after discharge from the military, with $5,000 in his pocket, he decided near Portland State University called Cafe Espresso and plunged into a bohemian world that was just starting to change from a beatnik to a hippie scene. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is our guest, Walter Darcelle Cole, as we talk about Darcelle on Drag Cabaret and the La Femme Magnifique Pageant that he also hosts as well. Darcelle, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you for inviting me.
You know, this is such a pleasure. I've been a Portlander for a lot of years, but we recently moved down to Arizona, finally decided to get a little change of scenery. But there's no doubt Darcelle's, right off of Burnside and Broadway, is definitely a Portland icon fixture. And it's been going on since 1967, is that true?
1967.
67, yes, exactly.
51 years.
Let's talk about how all this started for you.
Well, I had a Cafe Espresso, and I had that until Urban Renewal took it away. To tear the building down, and then I had a after-hours jazz club. I had no liquor anywhere until I bought a bar in Old Town, which then was Skid Row on Northwest 3rd and Davis. And none of my gay friends would come across Burnside because they thought it was a scary area. So I hired a lesbian bartender, and for about 5 years, our place was kept alive with our lady friends. And to entertain them, Roxy Leroy, Tina Sandell, and myself started a show on a 4x8 banquet table, and we had a home stereo to work with, and our lighting was a slide projector. I don't think people even know what that is anymore, but we had a slide projector. And the rest has become history.
Now, you were born in the 1930s. Life certainly was a lot different then, obviously, than it is today. But let's talk about some of the unique differences, especially as you were beginning to feel somehow you were probably different from a lot of people and what society was like in that time, because that couldn't have been easy for you at that time, was it?
Well, in 1930 is when I was born, and when I took the step to buy a coffee house, I had 2 children by then, and Meredith and Walter, and a lovely home and a lovely wife. But my life wasn't complete, and it finally I had to admit that I was gay, and that in the '60s that wasn't a happy thing to be. It wasn't very accepted.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think it's very unique how back in the day, you look at the 1930s, 1940s, and the 1950s, and Portland also at that time was also known as Stumptown, and it was also well known for their jazz scene as well.
Yes.
But yet back in the day, dancing and performances involving musical instruments were, well, at least more than one anyway, pretty much forbidden, taboo in Oregon taverns. Talk about what the rules were like then, even though they had such a lively jazz scene back in the day.
Well, in taverns, for many years, when you had beer and wine, you could not have entertainment. In fact, you couldn't even sing happy birthday to your customers. But we started our shows miming, not singing. and not dancing. And we got away with it for a lot of years before the law changed so that we could have entertainment. I know taverns then had to close at 1 o'clock in the 1 o'clock p.m. and or a.m. Pardon me, and then the law changed that we could stay open until 2:30, like the cocktail bars.
Now, how did you decide to move in this direction with your life to create the idea of the drag show, Darcelle's, the whole bit? Where did that idea actually come from for you?
It evolved. My partner at the time, Roxy, worked in Vegas, and we went to San Francisco a couple of times, and we saw Pinocchios. And my partner was a dancer and a choreographer, and I'd never done it before. I was 37 years old when we started, and I was in a lot of local theater, Mark Allen Players, Civic Theater. I always played attorneys, doctors, or in a suit, and I changed the suit to a dress, and that's how simple it was.
I know. I'm kind of reminded for some reason when I talked with the actor Peter Falk a good few years back, just before Alzheimer's really took hold on him. And it was funny because most of the roles he played early in his career were always gangsters. Then he ends up becoming a detective, as we all know as Columbo. And here, you're in these suits. You're playing attorneys and so forth. And, of course, you take a look at the laws and how they were in Portland, and you become Darcelle, and you skirt around the law by lip-syncing.
Right. And also, at the time, we were actually closeted in our club. We didn't be dressed and walk out unless we were back in our Levi's. Not because it was illegal. It just too many people not liking it.
Right. And it's unique because Portland, Oregon is also considered very liberal. I mean, this day and age, it's a much different city than I remember it 40 years ago, for instance.
Oh, absolutely.
And, in fact, we moved up there, and it was the following year that the Portland Trailblazers would win their first and only title so far. And, again, the city was so much different then, and Chinatown was actually slowly beginning to evolve, too. And that's basically, Darcelle's is almost pretty much right outside the gate.
One block from Chinatown.
Right.
But Chinatown isn't Chinatown anymore. There's only one Chinese restaurant left.
Right. They're all just a bunch of big buildings promising Chinese food.
Well, no, there's new construction. They're all moved out to 82nd, Northeast, Southeast, 82nd.
Yeah, Division Street.
When I was a kid, after we would go do a high school function, we always drove down to Chinatown to eat Chinese food in the middle of the night.
Right.
Well, now nobody does that. They don't drive down there to eat Chinese food. They can practically go from their kitchen door to the next door, being in that part of the world.
Now, here's an enjoyable story that I like to share with people about you, and especially the Portland iconic people during the time. And I believe this was in the early 1990s, and it could be late 80s, but I think it was the early 1990s. I was reading a copy of the Oregonian, and sure enough, there was this marvelous picture of a couple that were basically having a dream wedding. And I know that you're going to remember this. And in this photo, this was iconic. It had Rowdy Roddy Piper, who was the master of ceremonies. You had Tom Peterson, who was a huge Portland icon when it came to appliances and home entertainment.
Right.
And then he was the best man, and you were the maid of honor. And I looked, and I wished today that I had cut that out because I thought that was such a cool thing to see. How did all that happen?
It happened. I was involved in just about every civic situation, all the nonprofits would call me to sell a ticket after my name was known, and so I just got involved in everything in every walk, and politically did fundraisers for politicians. So I've really been very lucky that you're right that Portland is a very open and honest and real town.
And there you were, being the maid of honor at somebody's wedding.
Well, why not?
Yeah, I really thought that was it's a
never
great
wear
photo
white.
too, because you think Roddy Piper. I mean, that was at the height when he was in WWF, which he was huge in Portland wrestling.
Right.
And then Tom Peterson, before he almost lost it all, but then his wife actually got him out of the hot box there.
Yeah.
And then there was you, and it was just a great photo. Like, wow, this is so cool.
I wish I had it.
Yeah. Now, how do you feel? It's how much longer will Darcelle's continue? I mean, you can only have something for so long before it's time to say, okay, guys, I'm turning it over to you. Is it something that's going to continue?
Oh, I see. You're talking about me being 87,
right? Because you're looking good.
I'm still doing 6 shows a week.
And
I've got sense enough to know that when I can't, I'll stop. But in the meantime, I'm still going.
And I think what people should know, and believe me, when I'm down here outside of Phoenix, and I hear people are, well, we're going to go up and visit Portland, Oregon. So if you're going to go see a show, Darcelle's is the place to go. And they're like, well, what's Darcelle's? And I said, did you ever see the movie Tu Wong Fu? Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and yeah. And I said, well, that's Darcelle's. And what's amazing about it is there's 2 shows a night, so you can catch an earlier or later show. And while you're waiting in line to get in, Darcelle comes out, and I know one thing I've heard consistently, and I was even surprised when I finally met you, because we took a photo with you, and I'll tell you how this all occurred in a second here, is that I was actually surprised just how big you were. I'm 6'3", and I was like, oh my goodness, because when I was on the East Coast and I'd been to places that had drag shows, most of the people were real small. But you came out, and I was like, well, he could take on Roddy Piper, I think.
Well, I've been in and out of that size, but tall. When it was time to have a name, the name Darcelle, because I was working for a while just. Demas Tavern, so Madame Demas was a tavern name then, and so my partner and a friend, we sat having a beer at Demas Tavern, but I owned it, of course, by then. And my partner said, "Well, you're too big, too tall, too overdressed, too much jewelry, and too much hair to be called Mary or Alice. So we have to find a name." And he worked with an actress in the 50s at Vegas, Denise Darcelle. And we added another L and stuck.
Now, are you familiar with the movie Tin Cup?
No.
Okay. It's a movie starring Kevin Costner. It's about golf. And it also has Cheech Marin as his caddy. Anyway, there's a scene in there, one of his ex-girlfriends actually runs a strip club. And there's a scene in there, and I thought of you as I was thinking about this interview last night because of the big hair. And the scene in there is they're back in the changing room, and she's going around, and she goes up to this one dancer and says, Becky, come here for a minute. This all-natural thing, it's sweet, it's cute, but that's not what we do here. We do big hair, lots of it. Look at me. This is what we do here.
And makeup.
Makeup, exactly. Now, let's talk about this La Femme Magnifique pageants that you have going on here. When did this start? What's that all about?
Well, 36 years ago, the same 3 people, my friend and Roxy and our friend, we were thinking that we should do a contest, because when we are dressed, we know we're gorgeous, or it would be very difficult to walk on stage and try to do anything. Your ego tells you that you're beautiful. Well, we don't call it a beauty pageant. We call it being glamorous. And it started 36 years ago. And the first one we had just in Portland, female impersonators. And we turned around about 100 people. And we seated almost 2. So we turned them away. So we started going to other venues. And then we branched out to Seattle, California, Idaho, Hawaii, and these places. They had their pageants, the regional pageants, and then they would send the winner and the first runner-up. Well, then that was just for La Femme Magnifique. Now we do also a La Femme Magnifique Plus, so my size can run, and so we call it Glamour. So we have two winners, and it's September 2nd at the convention center. We're on the hotel, different hotels, and when we over the years and venues, but we found that the convention center parking and their sound and it's just really wonderful for our pageant. It's $35, and we haven't changed it since we started. We've usually about 50, 60 tables.
Now, the story I wanted to share with you, I thought you would feel hopefully warm about because I do sharing with it. We started our radio show back in 2004 in Portland, as I was saying earlier. We celebrated our first year anniversary in 2005. We decided, 15 of us, to celebrate our first year anniversary at your nightclub.
Oh, okay.
That's when we took the picture with you guys, and I said, and everybody's like, Darcelle's, I've heard of that. Why would you want to go there? I said, because I can't think of a better place because we were a very unique show. Nobody else was doing what we were doing in the United States, and I figured, why not be there? Because you're the oldest running drag show on the West Coast now.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And the oldest performing drag queen in the world, Guinness World Records.
And also considered the unofficial welcome wagon to Portland, according to Kelly Clark of Willamette Week.
Yeah.
And to kick things off, I bet this really warmed your heart as well. There you were, a Grand Marshal, the Portland Rose Festival Starlight Parade, which is huge.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And accepted by everybody, all the screaming people along the way. So it's so much fun. We just recently, I don't think it's even the Oregonian newspaper. They have an online paper now called Oregonian Live, and I was included in 100 of the Oregon's most influential people. The whole history of Oregon. What an honor that is.
Absolutely. Like I said, I tell people you need to go see Darcelle's. If there's one place you're going to go and you're not there for very many days in Portland, that's the place to go. And it's always funny when I describe exactly what Darcelle's is. I said, you'll never enjoy another show like that anywhere that I can think of.
Also, you must stop first at Voodoo Donuts, and then to Darcelle's. We're about 2 blocks apart.
And you know what's funny about that, too, is how many people anywhere know what Voodoo Donuts is. I'm like, what in the hell's going on with this here?
Well, Voodoo Donuts, Oprah, they were on her show. That would be worldwide.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And they now have branched out to college areas and stuff. They have quite a few satellites now in their donuts. We are one place. We've been there for 51 years. And also the social media now is fantastic. I mean, for the show last night, we had an 8 o'clock show on Wednesday and Thursday, and Friday and Saturday, 2 shows, 8 o'clock and 10:30. We had people from Amsterdam and from Miami and Midwest and Arizona and all over stop by our place because they see it and heard of it online.
And you never know. You may have just inspired a franchise all over the world, too.
Perhaps.
That'd be something.
I have all I can handle.
Let somebody else run it, but you could use the name.
Yeah,
that works for me.
Go for it.
Now, I know that you also did a one-person show in 2010.
Yes.
Tell us what that was.
It took about a year and a half to almost 2 years. I've always said I want to do a one-man show. We wrote it. I had a helper, Sharon Knorr, and we met every Monday evening at 5 o'clock and put together my life from Linton to now, to then, 8 years ago, and it was about 45 minutes, and I opened up with everything. You can't, if you do a biography, you better tell the truth and tell all of it. And so I did it on stage. We did about 30 performances over a period of, a couple of years. And I didn't do no drag. I just black shirt and black trousers, and I was Walter standing there telling my story. And the reason I did that is because Darcelle is known for comic and the comic look and the not caring about anything attitude.
And the best rendition of Rhinestone Cowboy anybody will ever experience.
Will ever see.
Love those chaps.
And guess what? I'm still doing it.
I like the way you come out with that, because people, they see it, they're like, oh, whatever. And then it's once you turn around, they realize, oh, okay.
It's all over.
It's all over.
It's all over. Yeah.
It's been a wonderful pleasure to really finally talk with you person to person. I always wanted to say how much we really enjoyed celebrating, our first year of our radio show. Here we are now, almost 15 years later, doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think what really comes together about all this, what we love having on the program, is what it's like to follow your dreams. You may not know, some people know them right away and they go for it, and you hear a really great life story, but you also hear the challenges that come with it. Perhaps in your case, you didn't know this was a dream, but it comes to you and you go, this is something I want to pursue that makes sense, that I love. And then you see, as I like to see, the boat wake behind you, like, oh my goodness, you look back and go, I can't believe I did all that. I was just too busy doing this.
I know. I have another book coming out from Darcelle's Mirror, and we're touching more than my other book was. Just Call Me Darcelle has been out for about 9 years, and so we're writing another book. It will be a coffee table book, and a musical's being written. Triangle Productions, Donnie.
Well, I would certainly welcome the opportunity to talk with you again and talk about that particular book as well.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I know just recently, again, you can't know what's going to happen in a person's dream until they pursue it. And just recently, it was about 2 weeks ago, we had Marion Ross, which played Marion Cunningham on the hit TV show Happy Days. And it's funny to talk with people about that, because at first they're like, well, what's Happy Days? And I'm like, really? And I said, just go watch an episode of it. And it's amazing, what they experience when they do that. But even more amazing to me is, here's a woman that didn't even land that role until she was 53 years old.
Exactly.
And she's almost 100 now. She's in her 90s, and she just looks fantastic.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful.
It is.
Well, see, 35. I was 35 years old, 37 years old at the time, and that's the first day I put a dress on. It was 37. I was 37 years old at the time, and wow, 1962 or 3, and it's just, who knew? I mean, who knew that all this would come to what's happening now? The fact that you want me to be on your show, people come from all over the world to see our show. Well, it's mind-blowing.
And that's what dreams are all about. They should be mind-blowing. That's why they call them dreams.
I don't think you could plan something like this.
You can't.
No.
Well, I want to thank you so much again. It's really been a true pleasure to talk with you. I know when the producer told me about it, I said, I've been wanting to talk with Darcelle for years, just to say, hey, man, we celebrated our first year at your place.
Right.
You were the only place I thought of. And so had a great
thank
time
you,
and everything. So, Darcelle, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank
and I hope that we get to talk with you on your new book.
Okay. All right. We'll do it.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program. Be sure to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We also encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50, as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.